I'm John Kraft, Edgar County Watchdogs.
I'm Erica Fernhaber, Shelby County Treasurer.
And I'm Kirk Allen, Edgar County Watchdogs. And we're here today to go over what's going to be probably a 4 or 5 part video series regarding the Shelby County allegations within the Sheriff's Office for official misconduct and theft. We've got about 120 some pages of records from the state police who concluded their investigation. Can we call it that? Was that an investigation?
They said it was, so yeah.
So we're going to go through these documents and raise some points, and there's some things that jumped out at the treasurer as well that I think the public needs to know. With that, within each one of these interviews and the documents, and we'll publish the entire documents along with the video, the state police did say that this is a synopsis of their interview and it's not intended to be a verbatim record. Well, we've asked for the verbatim record. We've asked for the CDs that all of this information was put on, the recorded interviews, and we've been in a FOIA lawsuit with the state police over that issue for quite a while now. So we got these records after the Attorney General chose to not prosecute. So let's take a look at what they chose not to prosecute. This first interview we're going to look at is the Undersheriff of Rob McCall. Now this starts on page 8 of the document for those that download it to make it simple.
Now, is he the current undersheriff or is he the former undersheriff?
Now he resigned shortly after the
Okay.
criminal investigation
I just
began.
wanted to clear that up. He's not the current undersheriff.
Correct. It says McCall handles many timekeeping and payroll responsibilities. He submits all payroll to the Shelby County Treasurer's Office. Any comments on that, Erica?
Either he does or Tina does.
Okay, and Tina is who?
She is the secretary at the sheriff's office.
Okay. What's interesting with this, it says timekeeping for jail staff is separated from other sheriff's office employees. Overtime comp and time off slips first go to their direct supervisors. Corrections requests go to Diane Burkhead, jail sergeant.
Dane Burkhead.
Dane Burkhead. Dispatchers' requests go to Bob Zakowski, the lead supervisor, and deputies' requests go to McCall. Now, I don't recall seeing interviews of any of those people. Did you?
No.
So that's rather interesting that the very people that are making decisions on payroll were never questioned by the state police. Compiles all the timekeeping and sends it to Tina Wade, the secretary, and then Wade sends timekeeping to McCall.
Zakowski compiles.
Yeah, Zakowski compiles it. So it goes through a process. Several people have got their hands on it.
So several people could have fixed it. But go ahead.
Yeah, several people could have fixed it, but none of those people were talked to. I still haven't figured that one out.
Several people could have caught that they were not in compliance with the union contract or record keeping.
How did you catch it?
Well, after you were tipped off I asked from day one when I took office. I had actually gone into the treasurer's office before I took office, and they were processing a payroll, and I realized then that there was no timesheets in the county whatsoever. So I went home and read the union contracts, and starting day one, I asked the board to bring the county into compliance with the union contracts, with record-keeping laws, to which Sheriff Kuntz made a visit to my office and let me know people don't like it, kid, when you make change.
Okay, and you took office when?
December 1st, 2018. First day of work was the 3rd. That was a Monday.
So that post dates our tip. You took office after our tip, which means, wow, you weren't our tipster.
No, I was
Surprise, surprise. How special is that? It's amazing how many folks seem to try to blame you for pointing out what it was so obvious to people that tipped us off before you ever took office.
Well, prior experience in the, the public sector or private sector, I've never had a job that I don't have to keep a timesheet. Even when I was in management, state laws in Illinois say even if you're in one of the exemptions, you have to keep a timesheet. So I was quite familiar with record keeping.
What really amazed me there's a lot of things, we could spend hours on it. But McCall advised that the employees go 1041, which is on duty, or 1042, which is off duty. The time in which they do so does not impact how employees are paid. And says Shelby County Sheriff's Office are salaried, Sheriff's Office deputies are salaried employees, and the 4142, which is the on-duty, off-duty code, does not impact how they're paid.
Are they salaried?
No, they're not salary, and if you're salary, then why would you need to document time for overtime? Because you're a salary.
And if we're not using the CAD system, which we'll get into here in a minute, why would they reference that they go 1041, 1042?
Correct.
It doesn't make any sense.
Did they read them their rights before questioning?
I haven't been able to get an answer to that. I'm not sure if they were read their rights or not. It says employees go on and off the air for computer aided dispatch purposes, regardless of time employees are required to work their assigned shift. So they're implying it doesn't, it's not applicable to their time. But when we asked for all the records of their timekeeping, that's what they gave us, was the log in, log out.
Yeah.
And said it was the timekeeping system.
Right. Agent Smith showed McCall an example where Fernhaber noted an example where Cindy Jones, a dispatcher, worked 20 minutes short according to the CAD system. Okay, so you identified someone that worked 20 minutes short. And the response was, he advised the instances where dispatchers occasionally get to work a little bit early and relieve the dispatcher who is currently working. So if someone comes in early, I should still get paid the rest of my time even though I got relieved early. Is that what they're saying?
That's what they're
So
saying.
we pay that person for the time they didn't work and then the other person for the time they worked for that other person.
Which if they start 20 minutes early, then that could be 20 minutes of overtime if they sign out when they're scheduled to sign out.
Right.
So why would you allow someone to get overtime just because they show up early?
And he says just because an employee is off the CAD system, it does not mean the employee is not working. Well, if you're not tracking the time, how do you know when an employee is working? Isn't that the whole point of what you were talking about when you started screaming for fixes to this problem?
Correct.
Is there any employers that you've ever met, John, that you don't keep track of time?
No.
I mean, even in the service, they kept track of time.
Yeah.
Why were you late for work? If you didn't show up on time, you got disciplined.
Traffic was heavy. Leave earlier.
That's no excuse. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, leave earlier. That was the answer.
What about this vacation and personal time?
Oh, it was all,
At the same time and according to the contract.
Yep.
It is not according to the contract because the contract calls for vacation time to be awarded after 1 year of service and on the anniversary date moving forward.
So what McCall
So
told
every
them,
employee in the sheriff's department was not hired on January 1.
so if the police reports, or this report is supposed to be believed, was McCall being truthful with that statement?
No.
I would have to agree because none of this was following the contract. But there was no follow-up question to McCall on this issue, which is just mind-boggling.
Which is documented with many, not just deputies, but many employees, and when that time was received.
The other one, he goes on to say, Fernhaber alleged Williams was given additional comp time for working a morning shift on Thanksgiving. McCall stated a possible explanation would be an error in CAD because of state law, there must be 2 corrections officers working. What in God's green earth does state law with corrections officers have to do with the CAD system?
He never said it didn't happen.
No,
He said a possible explanation could be.
But how is that explanation?
Well, and if you go back and review that.
It doesn't match.
That employee, it says there that they started in October of 2019, but looking at their attendance reports, they were actually awarded 24 hours of personal time in September, a month prior to when they even were hired.
I mean, his explanation just doesn't make any sense. It has nothing to do with the question at hand. He was shown additional examples where employees, Tyler Kuntz, isn't that the sheriff's kid?
So,
The sheriff's son, and Justin Dudra earned time, but they may not have been listed as working according to the schedule. Wasn't Tyler the one mentioned by the forensic audit?
making 50 cents more an hour than what
Than
the
the-
contract called for.
more than the other people. I wonder who approved that pay. McCall stated a possible explanation for this would be the scheduled employee may have called in sick and Tyler covered the shift. May have called in sick. I recall seeing in this report, they made a statement they don't keep track of sick time. Well, then how do you know someone called in sick?
That was just a possible explanation that somebody may have called in
There
sick.
you go. It's a possibility. Gotcha. I missed that. Another possible explanation, including training schedule outside of work. Okay, so do we track that? There's no evidence of people
I'm sure they get paid for going to training outside their normal work hours.
Well, I'm sure they do.
One slip they provided had one training for that Alice at a church in Findlay. But again, why are they not on, if they're getting paid with taxpayer dollars, why are they not on the clock while they are in this training? And why is it not tracked?
I didn't see the ISP ask that question. I don't know if you caught that or not. A lot of questions the state police didn't ask.
Did not ask.
This next one, McCall advises schedules provided to Fernhaber in the FOIA request were not final schedules. Okay, what, did you request schedules or timesheets?
I requested timesheets, and what started this whole process was we had an employee that had, as far as I could tell, had gotten pay. Of course, we had no timesheets. And Rob McCall had called me and said, no, he's been paid. Then Tina called and said, no, we owe him $642. Then Rob called back and said, I made a mistake. But that very payment to that employee was a finding in the audit, the 2020 fiscal year audit by Weston Company, that said there was a $642 payment to a sheriff's employee with no supporting documentation.
Which is pretty much
Which
what
means
you
that
said.
the Weston Company confirmed
Right.
that we have issues.
He says that they don't maintain final schedules to reflect employees calling in sick or personal time, or taking personal time. Well, if they don't maintain any of that, how do you
have accurate record keeping? Especially when sick time is then applied when they do retire or resign. You know, that sick time is provided to IMRF and
How many personal sick days do they get a year?
3.
3?
So if they use 3 and there's no record, they can use 3 more.
Right.
But when you're a new employee, you don't get them until after your probationary period and on a schedule. But that was the problem with Williams. He got 3 a month before he was even hired.
But, well, there's another part of that where they claim nobody ever went into a negative balance in these reports. So we'll get into that in one of the follow-up interviews. On to the gun issue. Shelby County was another one of these cases where they were selling guns that were seized from people they've arrested and convicted.
Who was buying them?
Their deputies and other employees within the sheriff's office.
Well, here's the county's code. No purchase of property at own sale. No sheriff or deputy sheriff shall become the purchaser, nor procure any other person to become the purchaser for him or her of any property, real or personal, by him or her exposed to sale by virtue of any judgment or process.
They didn't sell them. They locked and loaded sell them. That was the name of the company that they said sold them.
That would be any other person who becomes the purchaser for him or her.
Well, the problem with claiming locked and loaded sold them is they have a receipt book where they accepted the money. If locked and loaded sold them, why did the sheriff cut a receipt for them? So the gun
And
issue,
reimburse them.
initially that started with a lie. They told us they never sold seized weapons. And after we bird dogged that, in a nutshell, they got caught. So they recover all the guns. Finally, word is they're all back. But in this interview, the state police asked McCall, about this incident. He says, McCall asked Vanderhyde, which was the former state's attorney, what that meant, and Vanderhyde advised the guns belong to the sheriff's office and they can do pretty much whatever they want with them.
Well, the guns don't belong to the sheriff's office, and they can't do whatever they want with them.
And that is why. Why don't they belong to the sheriff's office?
Because the state law says it belongs to the department, which is Department of the Illinois State
The court
Police.
controls all
Well,
evidence.
the court controls it. The court couldn't even order it.
Right. The court, in that process, in the statute that covers seized weapons, once the conviction all evidence of that case is property of the court. None of that evidence can be disposed of, especially guns, without an order from the court. And that's what I asked originally,
Right.
was I want a copy of the court orders relating to these weapons.
And the court can't even order the sheriff to be able to sell them.
Right.
If they don't use them for their own training, then they got to go to the Illinois State Police or get destroyed,
Right.
or the state police can use them.
Now, they claim they took the seized firearms to Locked and Loaded in Pana, Illinois. Locked and Loaded's refused to answer our questions. We find no evidence of any interviews with Locked and Loaded. So if they did interview them, they haven't disclosed all the records to me. You know, they're claiming this is all that they put together and gave to the Attorney General. After selling the firearms, it was discovered it was the wrong thing to do and all money was refunded those who purchased the firearms. Well, that's part of where we have a rub, is you don't have any way of validating that, do you?
No, because they say they put it in the shop with a cop account, which is an account controlled by the sheriff's department. We do have a shop with a cop fund that is run through the treasurer's office. So they're kind of mixing the two and muddying the waters, because what they provided to the state police is a printout from the treasurer's office with the fund, but also the printout from the bank for the account, and those monies never came through the treasurer's office.
Yeah, and what we identified is the money that was paid versus the money returned, and then the $25 fee for FFL. None of these deposit slips and receipts balance, and nobody has been able to address it. And even though, I think you had mentioned before, Weston, the auditor, had said you should be in control of those because you are the treasurer.
So did the prior auditor before
And don't
Weston
think for
Company.
1 second we were just picking on Shelby County Sheriff on this gun issue. We FOIA'd every single county sheriff in the state
Yeah,
for information on the sale of seized firearms, and we had to sue Hancock County, and we won in court.
and Crawford County,
To get
and we
to
won
that.
that one too.
Yeah, to get the names of the people that purchased the guns, so we could cross-reference to make sure it wasn't sheriff's department and deputies that were purchasing the guns.
Now, this interview was on May 14th, 2020. It started at 12:14 p.m. and they say it concluded at 1:10 p.m.
Less than an hour.
Wow, that is amazing. Now, they did put in here that all of this, they recorded it and they packaged the CD and labeled it Exhibit 2. All of this is part of a sealed exhibit. It should be unsealed now, since it's all, you know, they're not going to do anything. And we're still trying to get the actual recordings, because we want to hear if there's other additional questions, other things that were said. All we can go by now is what's in this report, which there may have been all kinds of things said that never made it into this report. And that's why we want the official recording.
Yeah.
You have anything else you'd like to add on the McCall interview?
Nope, I'm good.
Well, stay tuned for part 2.